I want to touch on testing for a moment because we get so many questions and emails for those who are thinking about perhaps working with us in terms of what testing are we going to do for that particular individual and how much it's going to cost. And I get why people are asking the question. I know that there is obviously a lot of different testing out there, functional tests, very fancy tests. I know that there is so much more awareness and marketing about things like stool test and mold test and urine test that it's tempting to want to do those tests, or perhaps you may be expecting your practitioner to be using and ordering all those tests, and you're worrying about how much money is this going to cost me? This is X amount for your services, but I'm not then committing to spending thousands of pounds on for the testing. And the answer is that it's impossible to say before we have this initial appointment what tests or tests we as practitioners going to feel the most relevant and helpful in your case. Testing does not replace taking the time to really talk about you, your symptoms, your timeline, all that has happened that has led you to developing the symptoms that you're dealing with today. Because you could do the same test on two different people and both tests come back really similar, but the symptoms, everything about those people are different. Or you could have two people with the same diagnosis per se. Let's take the example of Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis, and they do the same test, whether it is a stool test or whatever, a food intolerance test, and they have very different results. So do you then treat the test or do you treat the person? Which, right? So the two together can work well, but if we're going, where we're going to start is not with a test. And we don't always need a test. Symptoms can really speak, very much for themselves. So testing is very variable depending on the person, depending on the situation. There is often an element of financial constraint. We do take that into consideration. In our clinic, it is rare that one individual is going to be spending thousands of pounds. It's really rare. A few hundreds, okay. Less than a few hundred, £100, nothing. That's also very possible because we start with a comprehensive assessment of your symptoms. We look at past test results, whether it be the GP, whether it be with your consultant, whether it be with a different practitioner that you worked with before. So we review all of the information. We have that initial 1.5 hour session time together to really go into the details about all that is going on. And we don't always need a test to validate something that we are suspecting or that we are seeing, right? So it just depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on your practitioner, of course. Practitioners operate in different ways, and you perhaps have worked with a practitioner before who was really keen to test and advising, and recommending a whole long list of tests. We don't work in that way. We don't shy away from testing, but we don't necessarily rely on a test results to guide our next steps. So there is never a black and white answer to that question, and I wish that there was, but then we wouldn't be working in that functional medicine approach, in that personalized approach to you, not your diagnosis or not what could be your label, but you and your symptoms, and your circumstances are going to be unique to you. So I hope that helps, perhaps not so much, but at least it just gives you a little bit of context in terms of our approach to testing and